Thanks a lot.
Well, morning everyone. I appreciate I'm the person that's keeping you from lunch, so I will promise to not drag on. We're going to take a slight diversion now and talk. I'm going to present a little bit about what we've been doing with postgraduate students in radiotherapy particularly, but in AHP as well. Hopefully you will have... I'll stand a bit closer, is that better? Yeah. Hopefully you'll have had a chance to download the app already with some of these tasks on, but you'll get a chance at the end of this presentation to have a little look at them on your own devices. So where we started from, well, I'm a reader in radiotherapy, I'm a researcher, and I have a passion for research, and I've led on quite a few dissertation modules, undergraduate and postgraduate. And there is a big drive. There's lots of policy documents out there that you're all aware of, the QIP agenda, that's looking for NHS practitioners to be developing new and efficient ways of working, better ways of working, and developing better practices for providing safe care to patients. And that agenda needs practitioners across a range of professions to drive forward that change. There's a whole host of other drivers. For us in radiotherapy, there's a document called Developing a World-Class Service, where it talks about the need for innovative practice, for driving forward and pushing the boundaries for new ways of working and new treatments and new care. And also, Health Education England is requiring us as educators now to demonstrate the link between what we provide in terms of education and the impact on patient care. So what are we doing as educators that's making a difference or an improvement to the care of patients? So there's lots of drivers out there for us to be thinking about developing innovative practice and innovative practitioners. I'm a radiation therapist or a therapeutic radiographer by background. I'm part of the AHP professions. There's about 130,000 AHPs working across a range of different sectors in the UK. Now, traditionally, AHPs are not as good at doing research and evidence-based practice as some of our other colleagues. So we're not as good as our medical colleagues. We work a lot with physicists. They're much further along in terms of developing their own evidence base, and we're not as far along as even our nursing colleagues. So I think it's really important that we drive forward the importance of research and research practice, and that comes to us as educators through really at MSc level when they come to do their postgraduate training. It's really important. So what was the problem? Where did we find ourselves? Well, with our postgraduate students at MSc level, sometimes with our students, we find there's poor engagement during the proposal development stage. Students tend to lose their way a little bit. They've been on structured modules where they can see clearly what they've got to do. The dissertation can seem this really long project, and it can seem quite daunting. We found that students often take a long time because our students are part-time. They're working at the same time, but they can take an inordinate amount of time to get a proposal that's sufficiently well developed to be good enough to go through all the relevant ethics and governance committees, and it takes a lot of support to get them there. And we felt that perhaps some of the less able students need a little bit more structure to help them formulate a really good proposal. And I have to say, a lot of the drivers that have been spoken about this morning are really important in driving us forward, but we had some negative feedback from our postgraduate students about perceived levels of support, and that's really driven as well the importance of using a different way to support these students. The other thing as well is a little bit of a lack of creativity in some of the dissertation topics that students come up. It's a little bit frustrating. There seems to be this little bit of a disconnect between what they're doing in their normal daily practice and then what they come to with us in the education. They're seen as two separate things, and we wanted them to be one, wanted them to see that their learning is part of their actual implementing it into practice is part of what we want them to do. We also found that the managers, feedback from managers was very much that they felt disconnected from the dissertation process, that they had members of staff in their department doing projects that they weren't necessarily fully aware of what they were doing or what the topic was about. They knew they were doing something, they knew they were busying off getting all this data, but they didn't really feel involved, and they felt disconnected from the project as well. So we felt that really if we want to increase the innovative practice of our students, and support them better, maybe we need to be a little bit more innovative as well. So I've mentioned those already. The other problem that's already been mentioned is that some of the platforms that we already use in the university, such as Blackboard and PebblePad, our students can't access them at the hospital. So that's the way that we used to communicate through the dissertation, is through the Blackboard site, through PebblePad, and they can only do that at home. So that adds to the disconnect, really. So they're only doing it in their home, and they're not doing it in the workplace. So on top of this, so we really wanted to be a little bit more innovative, so we contacted MyKnowledgeMap to see if they could help, and of course they introduced us to their Myprogress app. At the same time, we really wanted to, with the dissertation, it gives us an opportunity to really push the boundaries and develop these entrepreneurial skills in our students so that they can make change, they can make service change, they can implement new techniques and new care practices. And entrepreneurs are, if you're not aware of the term, it's just like it's a corporate entrepreneur. It's those people who push boundaries but within the existing organisational structure. This is a little bit of a complicated slide, but we'd already done a little bit of work at Sheffield Hallam previously to look at how to develop entrepreneurial practitioners, and we developed a pedagogy around how we could encourage our students at postgraduate level to develop those skills. And this is just a complicated map a little bit about how people become entrepreneurs, how they develop those skills, and it's the kind of path to entrepreneurship. So they have this initial skill set, they're constantly developing, learning, and they do a lot of things like learning by doing, learning by networking, and learning from mentors, learning from patients, learning from failure, and learning from mistakes. And they have all the additional, they take on board the formal learning in higher education and also learning on the job. So we needed to take into account how these entrepreneurs learn and build that into the app design. And this is what drove the pedagogy, really. You also have these enablers, so obviously things that are important. So an organisational environment that's open to innovation, these are all key. And strategies that make it happen. So managing expectations, building resilience in these students, getting them to recognise what their own skill set is and what they bring to the table, but in recognising that they also need to bring people along with them. So recognising how entrepreneurs learn and the path to becoming somebody who's going to be a change agent, somebody who's going to make a difference and change practice, was something we needed to bear in mind when we built the tasks for the app. And again, this is a little bit busy. I don't know that it comes out very clearly, but basically for the dissertation, for the proposal aspect, we take them from task 1 through to task 8 is complete, getting the proposal to a level where it's ready for submission to an ethics committee or locally to the university for university ethics approval. I'll go through these in a little bit more detail. So in addition to these tasks that are very much work-based tasks, they're the tasks that researchers need to go through to get a really good proposal. We have on lots of resources on the MyKnowledgeMap web-based page around overcoming barriers. We've got people that we've identified as entrepreneurs actually doing audio podcasts explaining how to overcome those barriers, things about how to learn from failure, how to reflect on disappointment and move forward. Because if you've done any research, it's a really hard process. You're constantly getting things thrown at you and you have to overcome, and it's very easy to give up. So we've got all these supporting aspects and resources on the website. So we took on board all of the things that we know helps people become entrepreneurs, this learning by doing, learning from networking. We've built them into the task design. So we've got a lot of task-based learning, very reflective. We encourage them to use their local networks in their hospitals, their departments where they're working as part of building their proposal, as well as going beyond that and using wider networks, professional networks. We provide some role models for them on the website. We've got some short audio files, as I've mentioned, and they get lots of support from the feedbacks through the app system itself. So this is how it looks, really. There's 9 tasks. The first task is simply a it's already been mentioned this morning, is using the app as not really an assessment. This isn't an assessment, it's an agreement. It's a tripartite agreement between the student, their manager or their research manager, can be the most appropriate person in their work environment, to agree the topic of the dissertation, and they simply go through the app and agree and write the title and the topic, how much time they're going to be allowed during their work to complete the project. And the final person that signs that off is the university, either the dissertation lead or the supervisor, so that they all agree on the project. But it's got to be doable in terms of an MSc, but it's also got to be doable in terms of the resources available in the department. The second task is we get them to do an elevator pitch on their smartphone. I must say that we don't provide any devices for our postgraduate students. They all use their own smart device. We've not come across a problem yet of anybody not having one. So we ask them to record an elevator pitch about their research idea on their smart device and upload that onto the task, and the supervisor can listen to that. It's 2 minutes, that's all they've got to present what their topic is, why they want to do it, why it's important, what the impact is going to be on patient care. So we give them some guidelines on what we want them to do. But the importance is about them being very specific, getting to the point quickly, and giving an idea of what the topic is going to be. Task 3 is about preparing for publication. It might seem odd to have that right up here, right before they've even got into designing what the project is, but we want our students to be thinking about the fact that they've got to disseminate this research, and that's one of the feedbacks that we had from managers, was that there is no local feedback to the department. The department don't know what's happening, but as a researcher, they need to be aware they've got to feed back to patients that are in their study, they need to feed back to colleagues. So we get them to think about who will be on the publication with them, who will their co-authors be, who will they need to get to support them. So they might need a statistician at some point in their project, so they may need to have them as a co-author. So we get them to think about that quite early on. Task 4 is about the literature in the field, and we get them to do the usual things of going out and searching for their evidence. But we also get them to identify what, the 5 key pieces of research. We get them to list those. But we ask them to get a colleague at work. We ask them to sit with their smart device, get a friend, a critical friend, and go through a research article that's really critical to or really important to their piece of research, and critically appraise it. And they do that with a critical friend and audio record it and upload that to the app. And the reason we do that is so that we can, as supervisors, assess how good they are at critical appraisal and how good they are at identifying methodological flaws, so that they can build and learn from that and build on that for their own design. And having a critical friend it really helps them develop those skills. So they sit with their smartphone, they record it, and then they hand the smartphone or smart device over to their friend, who fills in some comments about what they've learned and what they learnt from their colleague while they were doing that, and zip it off to the supervisor. We then get them to more formally articulate what the method is, and there's a form on the app about what's the aims, what's the research questions, what's the design, where you're going to get your participants from, the whole design bit. And what we ask them to do with that is we ask them to, they need to either speak to their research lead or somebody who's got some experience of doing research, might be a clinician in the department, and they talk to that clinician about what their study is and what they want to do. And again, at the end of that, they simply hand the smart device over and ask them to complete it in terms of how good they think the proposal is at that stage. And there's some very simple questions about the design, what they need to change, what advice they would give them at that stage. So they're building, and the student is very much designing this pathway themselves. So they choose who to go with, who are the best stakeholders, who are the most important people to give them advice at that stage. We also then, the next task is about gaining stakeholder input, and for this might be user involvement, depends what the study design is, but we would ask them to go to the local hospital user forum, present their research, and at the end of the presentation use their smart device to get some input from users. It's almost impossible to do research now without user involvement. It's critical to getting a really good research design. Is getting user input and perspective on the research. So it's getting them used to doing that as a researcher. And it's a really good way of getting user input straight away, because they're in the moment thoughts of what the research is all about. Task 7 is getting them used to doing a research journal. and keeping a journal and using that as an audit trail later on when they come to write up. And then finally, they've got the full proposal, which is a bit like the method section, but a bit more detailed, the complete thing. And on the app, we actually use the checklist that our ethics committee use as a way of assessing the quality of the study. So it's like a pre-preparation to submission for ethics approval. And then the final task is once they've done the proposal, once it's got ethics and governance approval, and they start to collect all their data, when they're almost at the end and they're ready to submit their dissertation, what we ask them to do is to go back to the department and present the results of their work to the department as part of the dissemination process. And at that presentation, they would then again hand over their smart device to members of the audience for feedback about how they presented, what the graphs were like, have they made glaring errors in the stats, just for input, and then they can use that and build on that prior to their final submission. So what were the key benefits of using a smart device? Well, it really, apart from using Blackboard, which is another way of communicating, it allows the individual to get stakeholder feedback in the moment while they're at work, and reflections from all sorts of different forums, like user forums, meetings, and members of the wider disciplinary team that they otherwise wouldn't get. We found that the learner becomes the conductor of their own learning. They choose, which way they need to go, which stakeholders they need to get on board, who they want feedback from. It's driven by them and not by the tutor. We did a pilot quite early on, and we did an evaluation of that pilot, and the early indicators were that the participants felt that they'd improved their knowledge of the research process by using the app, and they were better, or they'd learned a bit more about appraising research evidence and designing a project. They also get that one-to-one feedback obtained through the app, through the supervisor, and it's a little bit more structured than the other systems that we were using before. So all our students are remote anyway, and they rely on email or telephone feedback from their supervisor. So it gives a bit more of a structure through the app, and it allows the student to monitor their own progress. They can see where they're going, they can see where they're up to, but also it allows the supervisor to track really easily all their students. You've shown it really well this morning, how easy it is to track where all your students are at and what they're up to. We haven't had a problem yet with students not having a smart device, but if they do, they can use the web version. It's not a problem. They just don't have that easy access of being able to do it in a research forum or a presentation. That's the only slight difficulty, but we've not had a problem yet. So that's really mostly what I wanted to present. I mean, I think the other thing that's considered to be possibly a challenge is that not everybody is smartphone techie and savvy. And we've just used it on all students, and we use it on other modules on our MSc courses as well. Again, like I say, our students are from all over the place. We've got students in Canada and all around the world, and just wanted to, for a couple of minutes just to play you. I chose this particular student, asked her to give us some feedback about her experience of using the app, and she is not techie savvy at all, and she's the first one to admit it, so I'll just let you listen to her for just a couple of minutes.
Hello, my name is Cardozo. I'm very happy to give feedback about the smartphone or tablet app. I used it recently in a module towards my master's course, and I have to say I'm a little bit backwards when it comes to technology, and the idea of using the app made me want to run in the opposite direction. However, I did use it, and not only could I use it, but I actually found, and I can actually truly say, it was a good experience. Basically what I did was I gave a brief presentation with background evidence and then asked for feedback using the tool. Asking for feedback in a very busy cancer centre where everyone's time is at a premium is very challenging. We barely have time to ask each other, how are you? So in that context, this was the most effective way of getting information in a very short time and in a very efficient manner. It was also a very positive interaction. It made me look savvy, so I fooled everybody, and it allowed me to get a quick snapshot of what the person felt, and he was so impressed with the technology that he actually ended up putting endless amount of comments in there too, which was great. So my feedback is that it's an excellent tool, definitely very, very user-friendly, very straightforward, and very efficient in its way of just getting to the heart of the issue and helping you to get that feedback, which actually was, I found useful because I was able to feed it forward into my assignment, and I think it made for a better assignment in the process. So I highly recommend it, and I will use it again in future, and I hope it's widely available. Thanks for listening.
So she wasn't the only one. We have lots of students who were nervous about using the technology, but rolled with it, and like I say, they weren't very techie savvy at all, a lot of those students. And like I say, we did do a short evaluation, and the people that we gave it to really liked it, found it really useful, and particularly some of those people we got to evaluate it were researchers, to see whether it was something that they thought was relevant to developing research skills, and one of them said, oh, they just wish they'd had it when they were learning as well. So, I mean, that's all I really want to present on the app itself, and I think you've got access to the app, and it should have all the tasks, so feel free to just, over lunchtime, have a little play with it and see what we've done, and any feedback you have, obviously, we'd be delighted to have that, and that's all I wanted to say. Any questions?